A big thanks to Audio for sponsoring today's video. More on them later. You know that feeling you have when you're really excited for a shoot that's coming up? It's something that you've put a lot of time and energy into, and it's something that you've probably invested even your own money into. You've asked your friends to volunteer on this passion project, and you just can't wait for it to get started. And then something unexpected comes up, and the shoot gets canceled, and it's out of your control entirely. Well, that happened to me the other week. Me and my friend Andrew were all set to drive a couple hours north of Seattle and film the second day of this doc project that we've been working on. And then something came up and the subject of the film wasn't able to make it. It's honestly not a big deal. It's not like the project isn't canceled. We just had to postpone, but it was still disappointing. And so rather than just doing nothing for the day and taking the day off, I decided to call my friend Sarah, who you've probably seen on the channel before. She's an abstract artist here in the Seattle area. And I asked her if she wanted to shoot a spec project on that day. Andrew and I had the day blocked off. All of the gear was prepped and ready to go, and we were itching to film something. So that's what we decided to do. We headed up to Seattle and spent the whole day working on the short film that I posted to my channel last week. So if you haven't seen that film, go ahead and check it out now. I think the rest of the video will make a lot more sense if you've seen that one first, because in today's video, I want to do a little bit of a breakdown on how I produced and shot the film. First, I'm going to go over the approach that we took to making this project. Then I'll get into a little bit of the post-production process, including the sound design. And then I'm going to finish up the video by talking about the gear that we picked to make it. All right, let's get into it. When we were talking about what we wanted this film to be about, inspiration was a theme that we kept coming back to. It's something that I find myself talking a lot about, both with Sarah and other creatives as well. How do we find inspiration? Where does it come from? How do we use it in our projects to make our work better? And Seattle is an area that I personally draw a lot of inspiration from, and so I knew I wanted to film it in the downtown Pike Place market area. And even though that's a little bit more of a chaotic environment to try to film something like this in, I think it fit because, you know, on one level, life can kind of be chaotic. And so trying to find inspiration from kind of the craziness of life takes some effort and intentionality. And that's where the idea of having her go away from the market to find a quiet place on that rooftop and then eventually go to the park with the city in the background to begin her work came from. We had a loose shot list going into the project, as well as the locations that we knew we wanted to film. The shots with her going up the stairs was something that we had planned out in advance because we knew we wanted to end up in that rooftop location above the market. Now, there was a few other things that we improvised in the moment, some different shots, a lot of kind of the chaos with the traffic and the pigeons and the birds were all things that we didn't have planned going into the project, but we were open to kind of having inspiration hit us in the moment and running with it and trying to incorporate it in the project. Now, when it came time to edit, I knew there was going to be a lot of sound design that I wanted to include in this project. There was just so many different sounds and feelings and textures when you're in a busy market like Pike Place. There's a lot of traffic, there's the birds, there's just the little details of wanting to, capture the sound of like a pencil scratching across a notebook or just the murmur of the market itself. And that was not something that I was necessarily going to be able to capture with my Komodo, given the fact that we only had 5 or 6 hours to film in both of these locations. And so the star of the post-production is also the sponsor of today's video, which is Audiio. Now, all of the music for that short film, as well as the music that you're listening to today and the sound effects that are in the short film, were all sourced from Audiio's library. Audiio has a really good library with both music and sound effects, and they also have this really cool feature that I was able to use for this project called LinkMatch AI. Now, LinkMatch AI was a huge time saver for this project because I was able to take a link to a song on Spotify that I was using as inspiration for the project and paste it into the LinkMatch AI search function on Audiio's platform, and it was able to give me a bunch of similar options that I could then try and use in the edit. LinkMatch AI is a tool that allows you to take a link from a Spotify song, a YouTube video, a SoundCloud, or a TikTok link and paste that into the app, and then it will search Audiio's catalog and give you similar songs. I knew going into the project that I probably wanted a classical feeling track with a lot of piano in it. I just think that that feeling is really elegant, and I think it matches Sarah's style. And so I was listening to the song Clair de Lune going into the project, and I was able to take that song in Spotify and paste it into the LinkMatch AI platform, and it gave me a bunch of classical feeling songs that were really piano heavy. That eventually led me to the track that I ended up selecting by Philip Daniel. I think this is a really smart and clever tool that Audiio has developed, and they're one of the first music licensing platforms to leverage it. It's something that I feel confident recommending to you guys because not only does it have cool, innovative features like the LinkMatch AI tool, but it also has sound effects that you can use, playlists and suggested songs that are helpful. And I think one of the other really cool features is that it has stems. So if you want to be able to pull a certain instrument out of a song because you don't like it, or you just want to isolate that stem, then you can use that. So if you've got a track that has piano, drums, and guitar in it, but you don't really like the drums, you can download the stems and pull the drums out. Now, the one caveat to this that I will point out is that when you download stems, it's not going to label the stem with the song title on it. It's just going to say piano if you're downloading the piano stems. So if you are downloading a bunch of different songs with a bunch of different stems, you're going to want to stay organized as you're downloading. Just something to keep in mind. LinkMatch AI is a feature that is only available with the Pro and Enterprise subscriptions. And so Audiio has decided to give a discount to my audience. It's a 70% discount that if you use the code Riley70 at checkout, you can get 70% off a Pro subscription for a year. I think that's pretty cool. All of the info is in the description below. A big thanks to Audiio for making this video possible and for being this channel's first sponsor. Now, all of this meant that we needed to stay pretty light and nimble for filming this. We were in a busy downtown location. Pike Place is definitely an icon of Seattle, and so it was definitely busy with a lot of tourists, a lot of vendors, and just a lot of traffic and people in general. So there was obviously no way that we were going to bring a large camera package or lights or anything like that into the area, and so we needed a camera setup that was going to be light enough and nimble enough that we could work in. And so we opted to film it on my red Komodo, and this definitely was the star of the show. I think that reds in general and the Komodo is definitely an underrated documentary camera. The fact that it's this cube-shaped form factor means that the ergonomics have just a ton of flexibility to be able to rig it up or strip it down depending on your needs. And with this project in particular, I didn't go with my Atomos monitor. I just went with my phone and used the Red Control app. And so that was definitely a fun experience, getting to do a full shoot start to finish on my phone and monitoring it on the Red Control app. There was a tiny bit of lag at times, but I think given the nature of the project, with it being a spec film and Sarah being the talent, someone that I'm comfortable asking her to do something again, and kind of knowing the time frame that we had, if there was a little bit of lag and we needed to get a shot again, that definitely was not a big deal. And honestly, the codec with filming in R3D RAW made a huge difference, because there's so many kind of mixed lighting scenarios in that market, and especially if you go underneath the market and there's daylight coming from the street, and then you got a whole bunch of weird lights in the market and at the different shops and vendors and different stuff. And so being able to have access to the white balance and metadata tools just made a ton of difference. Like, just the flexibility of this codec is just great to be able to work with and go from like a bad image that is like the wrong white balance, the exposure is slightly off, to be able to correct it in post, and then to be able to take that corrected decent looking image and then take the 16-bit image and add a creative color grade to it was just really satisfying. And being able to take something like this that's small with just, like my iPhone right on top, made filming with a Red in a busy area pretty easy and seamless, and we didn't have too many people harassing us or asking Sarah if she was famous.
Are you famous? Looks like you're famous.
The other camera that we opted to shoot on was my Sony a7S III, and we were primarily using the 70-300 Sony G lens. And this was for some slow motion shots and some forced long lens perspective on a few different angles with different shots that we had. The lenses that I used on my Komodo are the Contact Zeiss 50mm f1.4 and the 25mm f2.8. These are some lenses that I picked up recently for that other project, and I've been really loving the look and character of these lenses. They're super sharp, they perform really well, and they also have a ton of character. And so it's kind of this interesting, fun blend of like vintage character, but with like really good optical performance that you see in a lot of modern lenses. And so it's a fun combination to be able to use. And the way that I approached this project with these lenses was to shoot a lot of the stuff in the market on the 50mm. And there's a couple reasons for that. The fact that the Komodo is a Super 35 size sensor meant that this lens is going to be a little bit longer, and so it's going to kind of add to that chaotic feeling where everything is just slightly boxed in a tiny bit. You don't really see a lot of what's going on to either side of Sarah, and because the background is so separated from the subject with the shallow depth of field and the fact that this is an f1.4 lens, meant that we could film in kind of lower light scenarios, and also the background was going to be out of focus. So if there were people walking by or vendors that were looking at us kind of funny, they're not really going to show up in the project, and it's going to be able to kind of have Sarah stand out pretty prominently in the frame. And then towards the end of the film, I switched to the 25mm. And the reason why I went with the 25 is just because the wider field of view was going to allow me to get a little bit closer to Sarah in the project while seeing more of the background. And so the idea there was that as the world begins to quiet down, as she's focusing on her work, there is less of that kind of chaotic, boxed in feeling, and the movement of the camera with it being handheld and slightly wider is again gonna slow down a little bit more and just be slightly more natural, even though that movement and that kind of organic handheld feeling is still gonna be there. And having those two distinct focal lengths on the project, I think kind of helps the beginning feel different than the ending of the film as well. So I think the moral of the story is, when life gives you lemons, you're supposed to do something creative with those lemons. This was definitely a fun one to shoot. It's fun to get to collaborate with friends, do something creative, and try out some gear that I've been itching to try out. So yeah, I had fun working on this, and thanks for nerding out with me. I'll catch you guys in the next one.